The JMF Advisors Show is a podcast for business owners, C-suite executives, and entrepreneurs who are looking to build, grow, or even exit a business.
We bring in some of our best financial advisors to interview experts on business best practices, hot topics, and sprinkle in some tax and accounting help.
If you're a business owner, startup founder, CFO, or just starting your side hustle, this podcast is for you. Well, hello and welcome to another Jameson Money Farmer podcast this morning. Today we're talking about the topic of opportunity zones, their tax advantages, and we have a special guest today that leads the charge throughout the state of Alabama. Before we bring out Alex, I want to welcome Carl Jameson to our downtown beautiful studios in Tuscaloosa at Seed Creative.
Yeah, thanks, Bobby. Thanks for having me and let me sit in with you this morning. I hadn't seen or talked to Alex in a while, so I kind of wanted to sit in and hear what he had to say about opportunity zones, where we were, and perhaps slide in a question or two for him. So thanks for letting me be here. Yeah,
good. Glad to have you here. Before we dive in, I guess I'll lay out a couple of opportunity zone kind of basics. And as most people who know me know, it's going to be at a base level from a tax perspective, but the opportunity zones were created in the 2017 Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, right at the end of 2017. The tax nerds call that the TCJA, so that's I guess.
I've heard them say that, yeah.
I mean, that's really now 5 years. I guess it's 4 tax years for us. The zones were initially really put together to encourage private investment in low-income community businesses and real estate, which are defined by specific census tracts. Every state in the country has some of these designed. In the state of Alabama, every county has portions of them as well. So everybody, this is really relevant for everyone, I think. On a high level, that code allows for taxpayers to divert any type of capital gain until essentially the December 31st, 2026 tax year for the sale of any property to unrelated taxpayers. So you can't have a related party transaction and take those gains, roll them into a qualified opportunity fund. That fund then invests into various assets in those census tracts, and if you hold that investment for 10 or more years, any appreciation on that tax on that gain, any appreciation on the investment, which would result in a gain, would be deferred for tax on the opportunity zone. So there's been plenty of updates since that initial 2017 law, plenty of guidance, all of those things. We do have a bunch of specific things on the JMF blog and on the website that are specific resources. We'll link all that stuff in the notes for the show notes for this, but unless you have anything else to add.
No, I was going to say one of the takeaways to me, it seems, is you're not going to avoid paying the tax on that gain that you're investing in something in an opportunity zone. There were some, Alex, I guess there were some early incentives where you got a haircut on the tax rate a little bit if you had a sale and invested, before a certain date. Those are gone, I think. And so you're still going to have to pay that tax on the gain, but as you said, the appreciation from that investment in either real estate or I guess a business operating entity that we can talk about a little later, any appreciation in those will be tax-free.
Okay.
If held for the 10 years.
Yep. All right, well, let's turn to Alex now. We've got Alex Flachsbart. See, look, I messed it up already. Flachsbart. Alex is the founder and CEO of Opportunity Alabama, which is a 501c3 organization which really dedicated to creating impact-based opportunity zone ecosystem to provide access to capital to Alabama's low-income communities. We know Alex for a long time. Prior to founding OPAL, which I guess is what you guys kind of go by, Alex was a corporate attorney with Balch and Bingham in Birmingham, and he did a lot of tax credit and economic development related work. Thus, some of the ways we kind of came across him. Alex had his undergraduate years here in Tuscaloosa, so he knows some of us personally from those times and running across one another here. So you've been a great friend for Jameson Money Farmer for a lot of years. So welcome and thanks for joining us.
Appreciate you. This is fun. Roll Tide and all that.
Roll Tide.
I've now alienated half your audience, man. I'm sorry. But no, it's I appreciate y'all having me on. And it's actually there's never a bad time to talk about opportunity zones, but this is a particularly interesting one. Heading towards the end of the year and with some of the movement that we've seen in DC. So excited for the conversation.
Awesome. Welcome.
Yeah, thanks for being here, Alex. Good to see you again, even though it's virtually. We'll you need to let us know next time you're in town. So
we'll do it in a heartbeat. No, I think I think Bobby, you hit all the high points on OZs. Maybe the only thing that I'd underscore adding to the conversation that y'all had before, maybe a couple things. One, we talked about the appreciation benefits of OZ investing, right? But we didn't talk about depreciation, which has been one of the interesting little tease outs over the last couple of years. And that is when you exit an OZ investment at that 10-year mark, there's just no tax, right? There's no tax on the appreciation of your asset, but there's also no depreciation recapture on the, which hopefully, again, most of the investment activity we've seen has been in real estate. And to the extent that it's real estate with some highly depreciable property or some cost segable property, it can create some really interesting tax opportunities to, use depreciation to shield ordinary income coming out of a cash producing asset over the life cycle of that 10-year investment, and then exit, without having to pay back that depreciation recapture. So it's been, as we kind of roll the program out, there are some additional little nuances that have been interesting to tease out. And, to get to a point that we made earlier, we talk, and I know we'll talk more about this later, but I definitely want to circle back to the kind of 5-year hold, 7-year hold, kind of where were those discounts benefit? Because I think it's been a big topic of conversation in OZ land, and I think it's one that maybe shouldn't be quite as big a topic as it is.
Okay. Yeah. And I guess some of the earlier ones probably already did that, but I mean, you can still, without that upfront deferral savings, I mean, you can still do them today, which I think initially a lot of people didn't even realize.
Yeah. Well, and remember, it's what's interesting, so I guess a couple of interesting notes here. So one, you're always going to get a deferral, right? I mean, no matter, you could invest in December 2nd of 2026, you'll get a 29-day deferral, right? Not great, but you're still getting the deferral. Candidly, the reason that almost everyone that we've seen do OZ investing is doing OZ investing is not because of the front end set of incentives. It's because of the back end set of incentives, right? It's because of that. It's because of the appreciation benefit. And, again, another under-discussed topic in OZ land, whoever's in now is paying what the cap gains rate is in 2026, right? So at the end of the day, I always kind of saw that 10 and the discounts that were alluded to earlier. If you're holding for 5 years, you get a 10% discount before you pay your tax bill. And the mechanical reason, obviously, we can't get that anymore is because December 31st of 2026 is fixed by statute, right? So unless that date moves by act of Congress, then by virtue of a calendar, you literally can't be invested for more than 5 years at this point before you're gonna have to pay your tax bill in an OZ fund, right? But if that date gets kicked out by statute, all of a sudden that 5-year hold benefit might be back on the table. Heck, you kick that date out to 2029 or 2030, the 15% discount might be back on the table.
That's right.
So I think to me, I look at that 5-10% discount as, and really even just the deferral. The deferral's nice. The discount is it's almost a hedge against tax rate risk, right? Tax rate increase risk, at least for me, when I think about investing. And I'm sure y'all do the same. Every single OZ investor that we talk to, we encourage them to have some supply of liquidity that they're thinking about between now and 2026, right? Because if everything goes according to plan right now, there will be a lot of tax bills that will come due here, and right. We don't want to see a lot of asset sales to pay those tax bills.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I guess to your point on statute, they could extend the date, but they could also raise the rate.
Yep.
And you kind of mentioned that, so who knows what that might be in December of 26 or 27 and beyond. So
yeah, you never know with everything is we're making decisions and recommendations based on today's law.
Right.
You never know how that's going to change and when that's going to change. I don't think in 2017 when this law came into effect, I think a lot of people had given up on it prior to the end of that year, and then all of a sudden, I think it was like December 21st, like, oh goodness, we got to update our tax software and things like that for the.
Oh yeah.
There's a lot of scrambling at that point. So Alex, let me just throw this one out there. We touched on some of these things, but I mean, what are the current trends that you're seeing around the opportunity zones? And you mentioned a couple of, I think you're very well plugged in a lot of the conversations across the country about opportunity zones. What are the things you're seeing happen here versus elsewhere? Just current trends.
Yeah, no, it's a really interesting question right now. So I think you look back, the last 24 months, I think to a large degree dictate the trends that we're seeing today, right? And COVID was a thing, y'all. In case you didn't realize that, late breaking news
still is.
Podcast. Yeah, still is in every way, shape, or form. And what's interesting is, the OZ regs came out the final regs came out in December of 2019, and really it was like Christmas basically. So we effectively got final regs on OZs in January of 2020. We had some proposed regs in the interim, but one of the big problems with those proposed regs was that they did not give a clear pathway at all for operating business side investment. We knew what to do on real estate, or at least we had a pretty good idea of what to do on real estate. There were some kind of fun questions around the margins, but operating businesses was a big, hairy, interesting question, which again, you're going to always have with place-based incentive, right? How do you, for an operating business that does business across the U.S. or even just in a few counties, I mean, how do you allocate its income, its people, et cetera, to work done in a particular geography? So long story short, the final regs, I think, actually gave us some pretty good clarity, for better or for worse, on the operating business side, but they came literally 2 months before the world shut down. So what's happened basically over the last 24 months is that the trend of real estate-based OZ investing has just accelerated significantly. I think that when this bill, when the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, when the Opportunity Zone piece of the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act went through, I think that Sean Parker, EIG, a lot of the people that kind of were the real thought leaders behind this really anticipated that it would be used for investing in the next great generation of startups that are not on the coasts, right?
Right.
And it just, I think, not due to slow regulatory rollout and just circumstances, it never quite worked the way that I think they hoped in that respect. On the real estate side, but I will say one fun caveat to the operating business side. All right, I'll give you guys one guess as to which kind of operating business in Alabama is the most consistently invested in from OZs. What do y'all think?
I didn't know this. I didn't know there's going to be a test this morning.
Is this trivia questions?
Yeah.
So outside of real estate, operating.
Outside of real estate.
I mean,
operating business. What do you think?
Software startups.
So I'm going to guess manufacturing, just because that's the most common type of business in Alabama.
Well, and good thought. And again, you got to think the way the final regs came down. They very much prioritized equipment and personal property being located in the opportunity zone, right?
Yeah.
So you think about that. So you're dead on. So software actually becomes a problem, right? Because there's very
Because there's
little
not much.
personal.
It's all intellectual, right?
Right. And, now you got a laptop and you got a dude working from
Yeah.
home and his home is in Mountain Brook here in Birmingham, or he's, North River or something in Tuscaloosa. And, okay, well, now he's got property outside the opportunity zone and he's working outside the opportunity zone.
Yep.
No, it's so a variant on manufacturing. It is breweries. We have seen more OZ investing, interestingly enough, and more interest in OZ investing into breweries than almost any other operating business-based asset class.
Interesting.
Yeah, that is interesting. I mean, and I don't. When you think about some of the states where craft brewing is huge, Alabama's not on that list yet. I mean, I think here we've got a fair number, a handful, but we're not a mecca for craft brewing like you think of Asheville, North Carolina, or some of those Denver and Boulder and some of those other places where they've got 50 and 60 breweries. I don't think we have 50 or 60 craft brewers in Alabama.
In Alabama total, probably.
Yeah. But that's interesting. Craft brewing, all right.
But it is. But when you think about it, you're right. We've got a high growth craft beer scene, and that's what's interesting. And a lot of these guys are positioning themselves for, I mean, and it's funny, you think about Asheville as having 100 breweries, but really it's got a much smaller number than that. Anheuser-Busch just owns about half of them, and at this point, which
Right.
is, and that's the same for a brewery exit, right? I mean, you can have a 10x exit from a brewery. So I mean, it does still get to some of the point of those. Anyway, so operating business side, very interesting. If you like good beer, you love opportunity zones. Remember that.
I got it. I made a note.
But on the real estate side, obviously, that's where we've seen the vast majority of OZ investing. And from a macro national perspective, candidly, one of our biggest problems is I'd love to give you some trends. I don't have any data, right? And that was one of the biggest problems with the way the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act had to get the OZ piece of legislation had to go into this reconciliation process, which strips out all non-revenue measures, which included all of the reporting requirements around opportunity.
Okay. Yep.
So we've been flying blind for 4 years, basically.
Right.
But the little, a couple of very smart folks at Berkeley and a couple other places have done some FOIAing around tax records in forms 8996 and 97. And they put together a study on 2019 investment that I think is very illuminative. So I won't make you guess on this one again. I'll just tell you.
We didn't do so well on the first one.
Yeah, no, you did good.
Y'all didn't do bad. You got the neighborhood. The number one city for OZ investing in the U.S. on a per capita basis, Huntsville, Alabama.
Wow.
And by a factor of 2, right? So if New York got $100, Huntsville got $200 per capita basis, which is crazy. So even if you look at aggregate top 10, Huntsville was in the. I mean, and that's just raw dollar value, not even
gross
per capita.
numbers. Yeah.
Yeah. So we've seen just explosive growth. And I think that's like broadly seen a lot of OZ investment into following the channels that traditional real estate equity, private equity takes, right? So you've seen a lot into the Sun Belt, right? You've seen a lot into cities in the Sun Belt. You've seen a lot into, you've seen a lot into coastal communities. But I think that, it's certainly having its intended effect of getting more money off the coast and into spots that haven't been traditional private equity real estate centers before, like Huntsville, for example.
Right.
Yeah.
But the money's chasing growth. At least the big national money. Where we've seen, obviously what we care about growth and we care about seeing good OZ investments happen, but we also deeply care about what those investments are doing for community. And so we've been encouraged. We'll talk about this later. We've done a good bit of our own work on that front in the capital raising space. Teaser for later. And then we've seen a good bit of Arcturus is a big national OZ fund that's done a good bit of work nationally, and they're invested in Alabama. Blueprint Local is an awesome national OZ fund that's heavily impact focused. They're invested and actually a partner with us, across the Southeast. So there's been a good bit of impact oriented OZ investment too.
Yeah, so I think that's a good segue into hearing a little bit more about the OPAL Fund. And I guess you've finished OPAL Fund 1 and are close to starting OPAL Fund 2. I know we've talked about some potential clients to invest in
Right.
in that fund. So, and frankly, other national opportunity zone funds. So, tell us, how you've done, and give us the summary of Opal Fund 1 and what we can look for in the future for, I guess, Opal
Yes.
Fund 2 and beyond.
So fantastic segue to why do we have this in the first place? Well, so Opportunity Alabama was created back in 2018 as a vehicle to be a convener of three groups: communities, projects, investors, project sponsors, really. And what that did was give us access to really interesting opportunities across the state, like every major developer in Birmingham, every major developer in Huntsville, Mobile. You pick a city, Tuscaloosa, right? Didn't know what this thing was back in the early days of 2018, 2019, and we were the free resource for guidance. We were also the free resource for guidance for, Selma and Demopolis, and a lot of other small communities in the Black Belt across the state that wanted to figure out how to make this thing work. So
that was when you
our
were on
goal
your
was,
evangelical tour around the
Yeah.
state,
Yeah.
talking to folks like us.
Exactly.
wearing the hair shirt, John the Baptist, roaming in the wilderness, preaching about opportunity zones. You're correct. I think I got
Locust and
I got
honey. Yeah.
I got to almost every county, and we touched every one. We had people from every county at least in one meeting. But what we realized, and really this was during COVID, can't really get a whole lot of people in a room to talk about opportunity zones when you literally can't put people in a room. So we thought to ourselves, there are two things that we really need as an organization if we're going to keep doing the work that we're doing in a more meaningful way. One is we need programming, and this is really on the nonprofit side, to help elevate, boost, and refine the projects, air quotes, projects that we get from communities, which sometimes were phenomenal, like really interesting stuff. Other times it was, hey, I've got this great building downtown. It'll be a mixed use development, retail on the bottom, lofts on top. Oh, that's wonderful. Who's the developer? I don't have. Do you have pro forma? No. Like, is the property owner engaged in this? So you have an idea. That's lovely. But we need to actually figure out if that's a real deal or not before I go telling people about it. So we built out a lot of programming on the nonprofit side, specifically to help to elevate interesting projects, refine those interesting projects, build pro forma market studies, materials around those projects, and bring them to market. And I've had some awesome and really interesting success there in markets like Livingston and Selma and elsewhere. On the other side of the house, we said, remind us again why we're just like letting tens of millions, actually at this point, hundreds of millions of private investment whiz over our heads into projects that we have been telling people about, and we're not investing ourselves. This seems a little silly. So we set up a for-profit subsidiary, created a registered investment advisor, hired on a chief investment officer, hired on a associate who's got a decade plus of commercial real estate underwriting experience, hired on a chief development officer who's got a decade plus of development and urban planning experience, and actually built a little team to form a fund. And we structured it as a qualified opportunity fund, launched it at the end of last year, raised 19 million. And as of a couple weeks ago, we are late breaking news on the JMF podcast. We're fully deployed on our first fund, which we're really excited about.
That's awesome.
So, yeah. Well, and that's funny, and that's the interesting part about OZ funds, right? I mean, you gotta be quick with your capital. And if we're having a policy conversation here, I sometimes worry about the effect that 6-month cliff for OZ funds has on project selection, and even on diligence to some degree.
Yeah.
Right.
We were lucky. We actually had, and this is really interesting. We stood up Opal Fund 1 as a double bottom line investment fund. We promised our LP, we're working with our LPs to provide attractive returns, but we're also committed to impact on every one of our projects. And by impact, we mean, two things: strong community support for the project, and creating pathways for underrepresented Alabamians to gain access, build wealth, creating pathways. And so what that normally means is, is the city behind this? Is the city invested in this? If so, we like it. And are you as a project sponsor willing to work with us to bring minority women-owned businesses onto job sites, into the construction cycle, into the marketing cycle, into the management cycle, into the exit cycle, right? Like, how are you authentically engaging with community as you're building out this deal? And fortunately, we were able to find 6 projects that really checked both those, that kind of attractive return and working with community boxes. Three here in Birmingham, 2 in Huntsville, and then 1 really interesting industrial one outside of Auburn and Macon County. So it was fun to do, and happy to dive as far in as y'all want into kind of what we did. But we're locked and loaded, and kind of we wound up, as we're building out Fund One, identifying about a half dozen projects that we really liked that we ran out of money for. Right, we've spent our 19 million,
Right.
and these we're going to close here in the next few months. So that's kind of to your illusions about what's going to happen next. I very much see a Fund Two in our future. So.
Yeah, so I mean, I guess when the law first became enacted, we were all thinking these are great incentives to help communities that need help in either the real estate investment side, the operating business side, and what Alex just described as their OPAL Fund One, I think fits the spirit of the legislation and what it was trying to do. Now, some of the challenges to me is the deal still has to have economic sense. I mean, you talk about a return for your investors, so I mean, the deal still has to make sense economically. If you can do it in a zone and it can check all those other boxes, that's awesome. But it still has to make sense. So you were lucky you had 6 projects. So before you start OPAL 2, you're going to probably maybe have a few more ideas in your pocket, just again because of that 6-month cliff. You kind of gotta have them in your pocket, don't you?
Oh, no question. But that's kind of so let me answer along 2 threads. So first thread, directly to your question. Yeah, I mean, the beauty of having this infrastructure stood up now,
Yeah.
and the beauty of being where we are on a statewide basis is that the phone always rings.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, it's not always a great deal when the phone rings, but
No, but you've been working hard at that for 4 years too.
Right.
Right.
Yeah, I mean,
And
look.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, anybody in our office that
Yeah.
says, "Hey, we've got a client that's looking to invest, or they just sold a business and they're looking to invest in portion of those proceeds in an opportunity zone or anything like that," we know we have to call you because you kind of know where the deal opportunities are. You are sort of that, in that sweet spot of knowing who's where and when, available, and
Yeah.
all that stuff.
So what's interesting is that now we still get those calls from all over the state, but we have a chief investment officer that can sort projects. We have a chief development officer that can go out and walk them and figure out what construction lead times look like. We've got we've got an associate who can sit there and build a private equity, coastal quality model to stress test it in 17 different ways, right? So we've built a infrastructure that sits within a nonprofit organization that very much is what any other private equity real estate shop would have.
Yeah, because you were wearing all those hats in the beginning, right?
Oh yeah, yeah. Thank God I am not wearing those hats anymore. And there are people that know what they're doing that are. But beyond that, I mean, to Carl, kind of to your point from earlier about having deals teed up. So that's the other beauty is now that we have our own fund and that people know that,
Yeah.
the phone rings more often, and we've vetted stuff that is just gonna, it's just gonna close a year from now or 6 months from now, right? Like just
Right.
because of market timing, because it's it'll take that long to get phase ones back or whatever.
Right.
So it's exactly to your point. We've got 50 things that we're tracking right now, right? That could be the nucleus of Fund 2. And whichever of those slow up or wind up pushing to Fund 3, great, and we can just keep sequencing it that way. But to your point, because this is really important, Carl, you said something earlier that I want to stress. Opportunity zone incentives do not make a bad deal good. Like we can't.
Yeah.
I mean, we've all said that, right? And
Yeah.
I can't. So when you look at our portfolio, like I'll give you examples. American Red Cross project here in downtown Birmingham. So it's 192 units of workforce targeted housing, meaning it's affordable to people making like 80%, 90% of area median income. So firefighters and nurses and, people working in the hospitality business in downtown Birmingham. And as a result, it's cheaper than on a chunk rent basis than just about any of the other comps in the area. So we like it from a lease up perspective. We also like it because it's a block off of the main awesome commercial, kind of like where all the cool hip restaurants are, artery in downtown Birmingham, 2nd Avenue North.
Yep.
And we've got federal and state historic tax credits to kind of buoy the rest of the capital stack. And make those rents. That's what we're basically doing. We're bringing in tax credits and we're using it to buy down rent levels, right? So that
Yep.
we can offer this kind of housing product. And when you net it all out, it's actually a pretty good deal. It's a pretty interesting deal for us. But it's serving this critical community need. That building was vacant for decades before,
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, it was an eyesore. And on that project, the sponsor team, woman-owned business is the general contractor, Wyatt Construction. She has subbed out fully 30-40% of the work to Black and brown owned firms, right? I mean, so it's just
Yep.
it checks. That's how, to your point about doing both. Like
Yep.
I just firmly believe, and we have seen that you really can. You just got to be judicious.
Yeah. Yeah. Of course, affordable housing is something that's a really neat idea. All communities are talking about that. We certainly are in our community.
That's right.
Which I guess leads to a question I've had. Bobby and we've been a little disappointed in maybe the amount of OZ investment in Tuscaloosa, and there may be a lot that I don't know about. Certainly,
Right.
I'm sure there is. But are you aware that we've taken advantage as a community as much as we could? I think the answer is no. But I'll ask both of y'all that, because Alex, you may know about some deals in Tuscaloosa we don't know about.
I mean, I certainly agree to start that, we haven't seen as many, and we've actually talked to some folks that should qualify for this is a project you're doing, so they meet the original economic intent. And it's like, have you looked at the opportunity zone portion of that? And they're like, we're just not interested in that. So I'm sure there are reasons for people to not take advantage of something like that, but even the ones that are already going to happen are sometimes not taking advantage. So I'm curious if you see that as well.
It's such an interesting question, Carl, because I feel like if it makes y'all feel better, I feel like Auburn's in about the same boat. And it's crazy. When you look at the map in Auburn, I mean, it's like the whole town is
in the zone. Yeah.
Really interesting. But I think, it's so funny. Like, I think it is very dependent on a community basis on like how much buzz and how much kind of initial excitement / investment there was. Because let's take Birmingham, right? You had stuff like, Lofts at American Life. You had a couple other big time kind of very public OZ projects. Mayor was talking about it. Local developers were talking about it. And what happened was, then all the private guys said, did a lot more homework and said, okay, yeah, I really do get this. They tried it a little bit, found out it really wasn't that bad, and fully bought it.
Yep.
Huntsville, it was flood of national. Basically, it was a couple local folks did it, and then everyone realized, the national money realized, oh, Huntsville's in an opportunity zone. And everyone's doing their national search of where are the highest growing areas in the Sun Belt. So it's this weird little, I think that it's a combination. There is some that is happening in Tuscaloosa. Actually, we've out of fun too, to preview coming attraction. We're very interested in Tuscaloosa, and I think there are some very interesting opportunities in Tuscaloosa.
Good.
That's good to hear.
Yeah. So I think more to come on that.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah, and I think we've just got to ramp up the conversation again.
Yeah, we had the same COVID still hit here, and we were not pulling people together in rooms, and probably not evangelicizing the way it probably needs to. But I know there's been plenty of projects that have kind of, okay, this has some interest, and we probably need to get it need to hit that back again.
Yep.
Particularly, as we're working on those workforce housing issues and things of that nature. So, well, we know that you have a deal you have to go chase today. So I know we're coming to the end
In
of
another
your time.
county,
Yeah.
we won't name.
Is there anything, to kind of close up and wrap out you want to share with us, or anything on the horizon that's of interest to you?
Everyone watch there's a new bill in Congress right now that would kick out that 2026 date to 2028,
Okay.
which would, and would add reporting requirements, among other things. So all of you, Terry Sewell's a co-sponsor.
Right.
Okay.
So there's a good bit of support for it already in Alabama, but I've read it about 7 times, and it's a very interesting. I can't as a C3 executive director, I can't make recommendations on legislation on a podcast, but I would strongly encourage all of you to read it, and if you like it, call people because it's a big deal.
Email us that bill or that site, if you will.
Yeah, that's great.
We'll take a look at it.
That's probably our teaser for our Opportunity Zone session number 2 for the podcast with Alex. If that one comes through, that's good to hear.
Yeah, because that'll bring that haircut back in, right, on the tax rate if you sell by the end of 23. But did I do my math right?
First time, that's right. It brings the haircut back in. First time Booker and Scott have been back on the same bill since it was introduced.
Okay.
Awesome. So it's got bipartisan support. It's going to be really interesting to see what happens here in the lame duck.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah.
All right,
yes, it will.
Alex, thanks for joining us. We certainly appreciate it, and good luck on all of your investments in one, and look forward to hearing more about Fund 2 and 3 and 4.
Yeah.
Me too, guys.
Alex, thank you so much.
This was fun.
Thank you.
This was a blast, guys.
Okay, look, call us when you're in town now.
Oh, I always do.
I'll get Bobby to buy you lunch.
There you go. We can do that.
Looking forward to it, guys.
Great.
Thanks, Alex.
Well, that's interesting on the opportunity zones. One, is great to have somebody as knowledgeable as Alex. I mean, if you're talking opportunity zones in Alabama, he's the guy you got to talk to.
Oh, no doubt.
And it's.
And I think he was preaching from day one.
Yeah.
Started in 18, and I don't think everybody quite understood what this could do for a community.
Right.
I mean, we sat in with meetings with politicos in our community.
That's right.
Talking about it more than one occasion.
Yep.
And we just never got much interest. So I don't know if we need to revisit that whole thing and talk it up again. You know?
There's so much going on around that, and there's so much literal opportunity around us. I mean, in our county.
There's a lot going on in the zone already.
Correct.
In this community.
Correct.
And we should be able to take advantage of some of that.
Yeah. We've worked on a couple, but, smaller, I would say, in volume.
Yeah, one-offs.
Right. But, I mean, like he mentioned, in Huntsville, I mean, they've got, I don't know when the last time you've been in Huntsville, but, I mean, they've got some, your big multifamily builders that are going to have properties everywhere in the country. They're building those type of mega projects for young professionals and things like that. And given kind of where the growth is going in Huntsville and expanding out in all directions, essentially, they're really
number one, he said, didn't he?
Yeah.
And it's all mostly national money, so interesting.
Yeah. So I mean, they're the Camdens and Trammell Crows and those types of Amleys.
All of them.
They're pummeling money into that market, and this is a market you just don't see a lot of those types of developments, and if they are, they're right in the box, which does not qualify. But I mean, any redevelopment in downtown Tuscaloosa is an opportunity.
Is in the zone, right?
Yeah.
So this has been a good segment. Thanks for letting me sit in with you.
You're always glad to have you.
Thanks.
All right. Well, again, we want to thank Alex for spending some time with us, and I certainly probably owe him a lunch when the next time he comes in.
We'll buy him lunch.
We'll probably need to do the just kind of bring the conversation back to the fore.
Yep.
So I think that probably ought to wrap it up for Opportunity Zones. If you would like Jameson Money Farmer to help you with your business, or you have additional podcast ideas or anything like that, something you'd like to hear us talk about, we've got plenty of folks in our office that are going to be on the podcast. We'd love to hear from you, so provide us some feedback or shoot us an email at info@jmf.com. We'll come up with, get our 4-page list of podcast ideas and keep adding to it, so we keep coming back. And don't forget to subscribe to the podcast on YouTube and all the audio podcast apps, and we'll look forward to talking to you next time.
Thanks.
If you would like us to help your business or would like to suggest additional podcast topics, simply send an email to info@jmf.com.
And don't forget to subscribe to our podcast on YouTube and your favorite audio podcast apps.